2, 1.
What's up, Dragon Ballers? It's not going to be a thing.
Hey, you never know. Stalgel's the man, so I
Well,
could see it.
It's going to take us a while to get to that level.
I mean, he is Stalgel. It's true.
Stalgel.
Oh, good lord.
I could only wish that someday I could create memes of that scope and effect. If only I could be so grossly incandescent.
Yeah, why does everyone want to be a bloathead, speaking of?
Yeah, why does everyone want to be a bloathead? I think that's going to be the next thing that we do after this, right?
Maybe. I was thinking
I mean,
it's going to be either that or...
I know you wanted to do a video on it, but maybe it's more of an open sort of... unless you feel you have explored it as much as you can.
No, I don't. Well, maybe I've explored it extensively, but I don't know. I think that it's either got to be that or Bag Zerk. But anyways, I know we said that we were going to continue streaming after Christmas, but looks like that's not going to be the case.
No, we both just wanted to keep the momentum going. Been thinking about Dragon Ball. Should just keep rolling through it because we haven't discussed hardly any of this before. So it's good to just record this while it's fresh in our minds, I think.
Say that's about right. I'm just changing some of the things on the stream for people coming in. Hope everyone is having a great time listening to this. We've gotten some feedback from some individuals, and that's I think helped us. As you can see, we have a new format.
Yeah, so while I was at work today, Owl was busy setting things up to look better and more official, and I think they look pretty nice. It's definitely more cohesive design, not just an image and sometimes a pop-up.
Yeah, we have some, a little avatar action going on for us.
Well, there's no action yet. I'm going to have to figure this one out.
You want there to be action, eh?
Well, I want to, light up whenever you're talking. I mean, there's got to be...
That thing is impossible to figure out. I don't know how to do that.
People do it, There's got to be a way.
Well, I guess we'll figure it out.
Just ask Mahler.
Yeah, I'll just send Mahler a message. I'll say, hey, Mahler, we're good friends, right? Just let me in on your secret.
Why wouldn't he? I mean, unless he's just inundated with mail so much that whenever someone genuinely reaches out and is like, hey, man, I'm a fan of your content. Quick question. I want to do a similar thing. How do you do this? I don't know. He seems pretty genuine. He'd probably respond.
Possible.
All
right, we got that going. If you want to pull it up here,
all right,
that might be a good idea.
Maybe.
So, episode 3 of Get the Mic, the Flying Nimbus / Oolong, the kidnapping monster. So we've had a lot of feedback. A lot of the issues that have been indicated by some of our audience is somewhat of the visual display.
Yeah, I think we've got about twice as many slides to work with for these 2 episodes now as we had last time.
And they're not going to be changing randomly. We kind of worked out a lot of those kinks already.
We put some work into the levels, so hopefully we sound a little bit better.
And some work, I mean, it's the ghettoest. The most ghetto, if you will.
Actually, we've been putting some work in on the studio, okay? It's a pretty official looking rig. I mean, it's pretty nice, honestly. You can tell from our audio quality, we are clearly in the biz. And
our mics aren't bad. It's they're pretty nice.
They're fine, actually. I'm pretty happy. Listening back to the episode, I was like, yeah, every now and then, the levels will be a little bit off, but you kind of don't notice it once you're listening to it. So
fair enough. So yes, I am Owl. I am your host on the left.
And I am Brok. I am your host on the right, I suppose.
Yeah, that's right. That's what I was going for. Good.
Ah.
As you can see, there's the chat to the side. If anyone would like to use the chat, please do. I haven't seen any comments in the chat.
Oh,
as
thanks.
Of yet.
YouTube says, welcome to live chat. Remember to guard your privacy and abide by our community. Thanks, man. We've been working on it. We've been thinking about it a lot, and we're hoping to expand into that soon. We gotta finish the series first, though.
What is it? Oh, abiding by our community guidelines. I think I missed the joke.
It's fine. I was pretending that the only text bubble was from someone, and I was
Oh,
like,
I see.
I see. And I was reading their comment like a super chat.
Okay, got it.
And
got
then
it,
so that was the joke.
No super chats.
It might have been funny.
As far as we know.
Comment on the comment section if that was funny.
Smash
in the
the
future.
like button.
I think it was funny.
So more of that, more of memeing on that. Smash the like button.
That's not going to
like
get old.
And subscribe, all that. It's not. I guess it will.
It
It
never
totally
will.
will. But anyways, yeah. So this is episode 3 of Get the Mic, and that name. The more I say it, the more I think it's going to just stick around.
It is pretty good. We're going to have to figure out some kind of delineation of it, but I think right now we don't need to worry about it so much. But eventually this is probably going to be like titled something different on the podcast feed you're looking at.
Possible. We've talked about changing channels as well. This is all just housekeeping stuff we're kind of getting rid of in the beginning. We're hoping to stream more than just Sunday and Thursday. I hope you guys can hear that. It's my wife practicing her tin whistle.
Well,
it's amazing. All right, so anything else we got to say housekeeping wise before we continue?
no, I don't think so. I think we should just jump into it.
All right, let's go.
All right, so this is an addendum to the last episode, a joke that I missed that I thought would be funny to point out because you were pointing out the sort of, how to put, the analogy, with the St. George story. And then, I'd mentioned the dragon, and you're like, well, also, you have to defeat the dragon to get the gold. And you had mentioned the gold a couple of times. Well, I think that Toriyama was intentionally making a joke about getting the gold from slaying the dragon.
Oh my goodness.
With this, which seems unnecessary without that context, but is a pretty funny joke if that is the context.
It's a joke. Yeah, you're right. It's a joke if... And that's the other thing. I want to reiterate that.
Why else would she need to take a piss and then would it show her pissing? But it's like, look at it.
Oh no,
there.
it's just lewd Japanese humor.
I mean, it's just this twinkling. It looks like gold, sort of. It's
very
shining.
twinkling. Yeah, it's very twinkling.
It's got that little glare on it. So anyway, I thought that was funny. I missed it, and then it occurred to me today, and I wanted to point it out before we moved on. So we haven't talked about basically anything that's happened in these episodes. So we're going into this completely cold. I basically have just been thinking about those episodes and Dragon Ball Z. And so I basically have stood here for the past 30, 45 minutes and tried to piece together my thoughts on these episodes. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, it is true. We started watching Dragon Ball Z last night. And, it a doozy?
There's a lot about Dragon Ball Z. It was a lot to sort of process.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what most people started on was Dragon Ball Z anyway. So is there anything else you had to say about this? You just wanted to include
little
addendum, right?
I just wanted to point out that might have been a pretty funny joke.
Here the boy likes golden showers.
Here the boy likes golden showers. Yeah. That's all.
Okay, fair.
Nothing archetypal about it. It's just funny.
Well, the gold part.
The gold is, but yeah.
All right, so here we go. Here's the title slide. This one is the Nimbus, the flying Nimbus of the Muten Roshi, I think is what it's called. Something like that.
Yes. So we are being introduced to everybody's favorite character, Master Roshi. In this
And why
episode.
why do you think that is? Well, let's start. Let's not start there. We'll get to Roshi. Anything else you want to preface this though? This episode.
No, not really. It's pretty much just a continuation. So.
All right, I guess we can get straight into it. Anything significant about the title?
Run it back by me again. How's it worded?
That's a good question. Let's check it out. It is titled The Nimbus Cloud of Roshi.
The Nimbus Cloud of Roshi. Well, I mean, that's what the episode's about, so you'll know what a Nimbus Cloud and a Roshi are very soon, as that's what we're about to talk about. But yeah, so this episode basically is taking us... One thing that I want to say about this is that it occurred to me, and I haven't thought about this, so I'm going to maybe bring this up and try to figure out if this means anything. But the symbology of water in mythological stories might be relevant to how I'm interpreting things, but I'm not sure. And so it just occurred to me, like, right before we started. So I don't know.
I think
We'll
when
see.
we were pulling pictures. Right. Well, yes, I think water does play an important role symbolically in the series. We'll see how that goes, but let's go ahead and get into it. The first thing that happens in this episode is, let's say Adam is still walking with God.
Yes, Adam is...
We'll begin where we
Adam's
ended.
walking with God. Bulma is riding her motorcycle that she has inherited from her creation ways and her ancestry, right? So
Right.
that's where we're at. And then this guy
comes along. Now, we've seen before one miniature dragon of chaos, right?
Right.
In the pterodactyl creature that kidnaps Bluma.
Yes, the sort of like lowest level, like this is the, trash mob dragon of the hierarchy of this world in a sense, right? It's just like swat it with the power pole and move on.
And so what does this guy, if you remember, what does this guy want?
I don't remember.
He wants Turtle. This is a more, and this is what I was saying to you earlier when we went to go get beer, is that there will be more that you don't remember that we need to analyze. So this particular character tells Goku, give me the turtle and I'll let you pass.
Okay, alright. So, that is significant, because I couldn't remember that. And as we were looking through the frames, I was like, man, I really want to rewatch these episodes so I can, like, reframe my thoughts.
It's time to watch the whole thing again.
So just watch all of Dragon Ball another time. No, we're doing this on the fly.
No, it's fine. It's just we might have to refine some of our thoughts. This is such a deep text.
No, it's fine. It's fine. Because I can think about it and I can sort of try to associate the idea and try to analyze it right now. So this guy is huge, first of all. He is bestial. He's basically, you could say, he's very much an arbiter of nature in a sense. He's just like out in the wild, walks up to the first person he sees, give me that. Like, he's wild, essentially, right? And in a sense, he's like what Goku could be if he hadn't had Gohan, so to speak, right? Someone with a lot of power and out in the wild and just taking whatever they want, rather than
bestial as
being
well,
on the
being
path.
Goku's part
Right, but Goku...
as Uzuru, which would be even more dangerous than, let's say, this, because he's had that foundation. When that's corrupted, it's more dangerous than someone who's never had it.
Sure. Well, I mean, you can also look at the separation of Goku and Uzuru as sort of a shadow, sort of Jungian approach. And so if you look at this man in this, in
But
this
it's more
particular
than that.
frame,
It's a more developed ideal than the shadow, because the shadow only has to deal with the self. The Uzuru, and we'll get to that in Dragon Ball Z, has to do with more than just the self.
oh man, I'm excited to get into that.
I'm really excited, and we're on episode 3.
Oh, this is gonna be good.
And that's why we decided to just go ahead and make another episode, is because like we are fired up.
Oh, we're excited to talk about it. It's exciting to learn new things about something. Just at something that you think you know about, just learn something new about it. It's just an exciting thing to do, and it's like, oh, we can just keep doing this over and over and over and over for who knows how long. We can figure out all kinds of stuff. Maybe we can glean some wisdom from it,
And that's the idea. That's what we're supposed to do. It's the purpose of stories.
Yeah.
Excuse me. So, yes, this bandit bear, he's drooling in this picture, and it's a bestial consummate ideal, right? And that has to go in with the idea of animal people used in the series. So, not talking about background characters, so to speak, but there are some bestial characters that exist in this show that Toriyama uses to symbolize things. And this is a perfect example, because this is a test for Goku, which I think we should bring up what your friend Dance told you earlier.
Oh yes,
about the turtles having
he might have rescinded part of that statement.
Oh no.
He then later texted me that he for sure was lost.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know.
Okay. Well, fair enough.
But maybe we'll expand upon that. We'll see.
But this is ultimately a test for Goku.
It is. The existence of this situation is... I think a lot of things are going to come across as a test. I think this is going to come back up in these 2 episodes, too. There are a lot of tests in Dragon Ball on the path for the Dragon Balls, right?
Yes, and it's not a test like... It's a test of metal. It's not a test of... It's not a test like...
It's a test of will.
Right. Metal, exactly.
Yeah.
METTLE.
Yeah. I know. But
so...
Yeah, it is a sheer test of how determined and essentially, are you actually oriented towards this? Do you actually want this thing? It's a test of that, right? And that's a big theme of this entire series.
Right, and I think that is something when people are just maturing into that situation, they need to decide. Particularly with our society, I think it's happening later and later in life, but here in this archetypal situation, it's supposed to be done when you're a child.
Right. Well, in the wild,
it had to be done.
It had to be done. There's no church in the wild, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all masculine. Goku has no mother.
Right.
That's for a reason. Because it's all action. It's the Red Queen.
Right. Run, and no matter how far you run,
you have to run as fast as you can just to stay still.
Just to stay still. Right.
Right. So it's this motif of from the wild to society, and this also, I mean, you can probably weigh in even more about that because I've never read Journey to the West or anything. So, but there's this, I don't know if that has anything to do with Journey to the West, but
say it again.
Well, these motifs going from like what nature represents in the wild, and then what society sort of represents.
Right. Not too much as far as I know. I haven't read the full story. It's a very long story. I've read probably about 100 pages of it because that's what I had in my college class. But there is a distinction between the natural, the divine, and the human made in that story. I don't want to get too far into it, though.
Sure, there's no need.
We're a little tangential right now. I would like to get back to what's happening in this screenshot. Talking about Bulma. What does Bulma say to Goku? Do you remember?
No.
She tells Goku to give the turtle to the bandit.
Yeah. No, I remember that now.
Well, I still want to bring up the idea that we brought up last time when Bulma was pointing at herself.
Oh, and no, this is a continuation.
Goku had lifted the turtle above.
Bulma just saying, like, this is a fool's errand, so to speak. You know, she doesn't see the turtle as anything more than a turtle, right?
Right, exactly. And I actually want to point out, too, it's significant that Goku is carrying a load, metaphorically.
Well, let's just let's paint on this with the colors of Judeo-Christian thought, right? And there's this idea of him picking up the load and bearing the weight of the knowledge of God, or the weight of responsibility to a higher authority, right? And carrying this load. And Bulma is saying, like, no, like, just give it up, right? And you can, and things will be easier for you, right? You can go the way that I'm going. You don't need to live that way. And he's saying,
so here's an idea. Is Bulma actually Lilith? Is she not Eve?
I think she is a fusion of the ideas that are woven into both.
Right. It's just an interesting thing to think of, because it's continually turns around, and we'll see later how Bulma debases herself in order to take the expedient path.
Oh, yes.
So here, right, I think we've established what's going on, really what's going on here. So
yeah, definitely.
How does Goku react to this?
That's about all.
Yeah, that's about all.
Yeah.
Like, I think it's also indicative of someone who is on that path, who's walking with God, cannot suffer someone who is bestial in this way. Right? Because and later on we see that Goku is less and less apt to use violence as he matures. But here, is...
Well, you know, the people who are saying there's that Goku doesn't really have any character development, and he's one note, and he's really flat.
I hate it.
Well, we can immediately point to the fact that it's like, coming back to the beginning, it's kind of shocking to see it, because we have a lot of peace after this. We have a lot of Goku maturing and trying to resolve things in a different way than this, right? Not just immediately attacking, but maybe just trying to subdue someone, or, you know, it's not just straight up murder, not just attacking to the death, you know, as if he were just in the wild, which he just was, which is part of his character, which is developing. So I just think that's interesting, you know. And you had said that to me originally, whenever we first were talking about watching Dragon Ball, you know, that there was more to Goku's character development, and I didn't even recognize it at first, right? It's kind of one of those things that, like, it's like missing the forest for the trees, which is what Bulma's doing, right? Because she sees the turtle as just a burden. She sees it as, like, why have it? What is the purpose to it? She doesn't see the utility, right? She only sees the burden. She doesn't see the, you know, the sort of the duality of what it actually is as a value, right? Because there's good and bad to it. Like, there's struggle, and then but the idea is that the good in that way of thought outweighs the suffering of carrying that. So
always.
Yes.
Always, right?
So that's the fundamental idea. So if I was going to, you know, try to paint it up to look like that sort of thought, which we've said before, this is not like a Christian podcast. The fact that we're bringing up religion does not mean that. It's just that the Bible is an extremely archetypal, mythological story. I mean, it's ancient. It has embedded itself in so much of our media, so it's just going to come up naturally, and we're all pretty familiar with it.
Well,
So
I
anyway.
also want to mention that we're gonna talk about. I think in this episode, I'm going to bring up the Egyptian god Osiris.
Yes, definitely. So,
I wonder if you know where I'm going.
oh,
So it's so
definitely.
interesting too. Some of the feedback that we got from some of our close friends who viewed this was indicating how it was interesting that we were discovering things on the fly, and I think that's something that is kind of missing, not only from Dragon Ball, but the live discussions of things like this. EFAP will do recorded things that they've kind of already talked about, or they're reacting to live as they watch them, but it's not
Yeah.
an
Well, it's
analysis
kind of
like
a
this.
it's like it's a group of people all at different stages of familiarity with the context of what's happening and what they're talking about. So someone may have seen it 3 times, someone may have never seen it, someone may have seen parts of it,
Precisely.
and so the reactions are kind of varied all throughout. In our case, I think we're going much more for like a just a dialogue.
Holistic approach, I would say.
You know, just try to bounce some ideas around, but not really. It's not just a joke, right? We're not trying to just meme. We come across funny things, but we're really trying to seriously delve into this and
There are
figure
some
out
good meme pictures
what is buried in the meaning of it too.
in this episode.
But the thing is, the memes they'll just come to us.
Well, right, okay. And so at this juncture, Goku can't suffer someone that is acting this way, bestial, consummate, if you will, the 30-year-old consumer meme comes to mind. But right, ultimately Goku is going to choose to align himself with his orientation instead of giving up the turtle. And even though he is tempted by Eve, let's say, he continues to stay on the path.
Well, you know, it's interesting to bring temptation up too because it is it's almost like these pieces of the Adam and Eve story are here, but they're separated out, almost as if they're like the Adam and Eve story is we have to look at it the other way around, right? We can't be getting the cart before the horse, so to speak, on this. So the Judeo-Christian thought is a mashed up form of a bunch of other forms of thought, right? And those ideas that predate the Christian thought are really the ideas that we're talking about here, right? To be clear. So when it comes up like this and we say like, oh, this is tantamount to Adam and Eve, it's like, well, Adam and Eve was really an amalgamation of a bigger idea that
Of
that's
prototypical,
basically just emerging here.
right? And Adam and Eve are the humans that gained consciousness.
Yes.
Our ancestors, and we talked about that last episode in how humanity gained consciousness through the development of color differentiation in food, and food is the origin of knowledge.
Yes.
And we got into that. So I think it is apparent, and it's good to use that analogy because it is present in the cultural zeitgeist. If we used something like Isis and Osiris as our prototypical man and human, or man and female, then it wouldn't quite work. It wouldn't quite be as resonant, let's say.
Sure. And I mean, it may not. I mean, I don't even know that much about the dynamic with like Isis and Osiris. So
Right, exactly, and
So
that's what I mean. It's an easy illusion to go to.
sure.
But moving on from here, Goku decides to eliminate this thug, let's say, and it's interesting to say how he defeats him. He uses I think it's Jenkin technique, which is rock paper scissors. It's more or less a game. And so I want to know if you have anything to say to that, Brok, about how someone who is bestial and is all about consuming can be defeated by the idea of a game.
By the idea of a game. Oh, I see.
Right.
So I'm putting a little bit together here.
It's like each piece of these, like it's each section of this scene.
How? So this is a little strange. I think what you're referring to is with animals, the origins of social interactions are rooted in play.
Mm-hmm.
This is
exactly
where all social interaction essentially comes from, because it's all about...
Because a normal rat's like this.
Well, it's wolves, right? Like wolves wrestle.
Yeah, wolves play.
Yes.
And by play, I want to be clear. We mean where the more dominant physical specimen will allow the less dominant physical specimen to win at least 30% of the time.
Right, because
that's play.
Is good for the social hierarchy.
That's a rule of
is,
play.
Yes, it's a rule of play. Play being a concept that just transcends, because of how prevalent it is, where essentially any form of a social hierarchy ever is established, it's essentially, it's just a universal sort of experience, right? And thus would be easy to call it archetypal whenever it appears like this, because, yeah, I mean, if he's full beast, that means he can't play. That means that
he's fully isolated.
He has been isolated because he could not integrate. Right? So in the scenario of wolves playing, let's say, the dominant wolf just doesn't ever let the smaller wolves win. Well, then, basically, they can't maintain a pack at that rate with him, and he becomes ostracized from the group, and he's unsocialized, and then he's weaker for it, even though he's stronger. And so it's rooted into our experience that was part of basically our origins as well, this experience of... Hang on a second. This experience of origins of sociality, I don't even know if that's a word. The origins of being in a social hierarchy, which we see as society and culture now. This is like, it's interesting that this is where the mythos starts with Dragon Ball, because this is also where the same thing that we were talking about, the origins of our self-consciousness and the consciousness of our culture are here in this interaction.
So what we mean to say, succinctly, is that someone who is unawakened and still in their bestial form, play is the mechanism by which you can begin to gain that social knowledge. And Goku uses that to defeat a obstacle that represents someone who has fallen to that bestial form and is nothing but a consummate being, let's say.
Yeah, and at this point, he is essentially a bipedal, aggressive beast.
Right.
And so he gets the treatment of the beast. He is just put down.
And that is that.
And that's that. So now,
yes. Water and the payoff of what Goku has been going through this journey since he's been walking with God.
So Goku has brought the turtle, which I don't have like a direct analog for the turtle. He's kind of this embodiment of a higher being that can speak for the higher being, and if someone is on the path, they recognize that, it seems. I don't think that it's like literally that way in the show, but I think that's essentially what they're trying to say. It's like Goku's on the path, he recognizes the value, he knows that it's the good thing to do, and so
Well, I think it's like you were saying, it's a primordial spirit, if you will. It's like the Holy Spirit is what the turtle is. At least, turtle is embodied by the Holy Spirit. If by spirit you mean mode of being.
essentially, I mean, the spirit of a thing is kind of, if you would say that someone's embodying the spirit of a thing, it's like that's their mode of being. That's, their animus, so to speak.
And so, returning the turtle here, he's overjoyed, obviously, as a turtle, as a physical turtle, but as a holy spirit possessed creature, he's also determined to reward Goku. But also I think it's significant to note how Goku reacts to the water. He is amazed by the ocean for the first time. I think the idea of the spirituality but maybe gained by the medium of a deep body of water, let's say, is something that has been present throughout mythological stories. What would you say to that?
Sorry, one sec. So Dance is chatting to us, but it's not working. So I think that maybe something in our settings isn't allowing it to show up. It shows up on his, but it's not showing up actually on the stream. So, are we filtering our one viewer out? Let's find out.
No, I see it here.
Why is it not showing up on the overlay?
It is. Okay,
What in the
I just
world?
need it pulled up. Okay. Okay, I figured it out. Okay.
Sorry, Dance.
Sorry about
You've been
that.
here all along.
Yeah, I see you changed your name as well.
Put
Anyways,
some egg
okay.
cartons on the wall, huh? No. It's going to sound like ass at some point. I guess chat is delayed. No, it was just not visible.
Yeah, we fixed it now, though. It should be good now. All right, remind me where we were before that happened. I'm glad that happened.
You were asking me a question, and I was distracted by realizing
I was talking about the development of consciousness through the idea of water, of engaging with the medium of water.
Well, it's necessary. I think that there's this. I mean, it can kind of get muddied in a way talking about this, because it's like what we do every day is go into the water, so to speak, as water represents the unknown and chaos and the void and all of those different things, the primordial origin, all the different things that are also related to water and the feminine. And so we have this situation where it could represent any of those in any combination in Toriyama's mind. What we're seeing here is that this turtle now goes into the water and comes back out of the water with someone.
Well, we'll get to that. Anything else significant you want to say about Goku's reaction to the water, Bluma's reaction to the water and arriving here?
I don't remember if they had a specific reaction to the water.
They play in the water a little bit because they wait for Turtle to get back, right?
Sure.
And like I said, Goku's never seen the water. He's pretty amazed by it.
Yeah, I would imagine he would be if he's on the path.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. Then we can continue. I just wanted to make sure there's nothing else you wanted to say there. Oh.
Yes, he's not returning yet because we have to get back to our favorite boy in blue.
So, Emperor Pilaf clearly in this scene, he's like amongst a crowd, and this is a dream he's having, of what he wants. And notice, I want to draw attention specifically to the lack of action of Pilaf. It is simply adoration that he receives from these people. There's nothing productive.
Yep. It's like he has no friends, right? A real friend to somebody like Pilaf would be the person to not praise them in their behavior, you know, to be the one person standing aside and saying like, hey, you should be better, you should do better. No one is telling that to Pilaf. He has an empire of people to tell him that there's nothing wrong with him, and that he doesn't need to change, and that he is superior to everyone in the world, and he can look down his nose at everything that he ever comes across.
Or anything that previously happened.
Sure.
And we'll get to that. My analysis of Pilaf as we go on, how he does not appreciate the sacrifices that were made for the good of the world before he was around, and how that backfires on him ultimately in a horrible way.
Oh, he has some stark realizations later on.
Right. And so here, he's just being his ignorant, deceitful, and arrogant self, but he is not yet resentful. But he will become resentful.
Oh yeah.
And
Inevitable.
that is gonna that unholy trinity is going to summon something that is
much bigger than he is.
Much bigger than he is.
Yes.
Exactly.
But we'll get to that.
And we'll get to that. And I think one of the best analogies I can draw for someone like Pilaf would be the character of Honest John in the Pinocchio story.
Honest John.
Honest John is the fox who tricks Pinocchio into working for the puppet master, the Italian puppet master, and that's where he gets in the cage and he's lying and all that. Then he tricks him again to go to Pleasure Island.
Yeah, I think that in a sense Pleasure Island's probably
it's deceit.
A better analogy than I made in the last episode. I had kind of compared him to a weird amalgamation of Peter Pan and Hook, sort of this, you know, and that's what Pleasure Island ultimately is, right? It's like that intersection of the two. So,
well, and in that story, those who indulge in the pleasures of Pleasure Island with no responsibility become what? A jackass.
Well, that's Pilaf.
I don't think you could describe Pilaf more aptly than a jackass.
No, I think that's pretty apt.
Right.
As we're going to see in the episodes.
And we're also going to see, I think in the next, oh no, we go straight into that. So also in this scene, after Pilaf is awoken, Shu and Mai briefly talk to him about how Goku stopped them. He doesn't really acknowledge it. He notices the next opportunity for a new Dragon Ball. And so they take off and go in that direction.
Yeah, pretty much just moving along.
Well, specifically towards Master Roshi.
Yes.
Which is significant for the episode as we go forward. And I've already flashed it a few times here. How we're gonna get to the OG, the Master Scrunge himself.
The Scrunge Master.
So I think we can move on from our favorite blue little imp for now. So here he is. There's so much. There's just so much here.
There's a lot in this frame.
And since you know the origins of this conversation were Brok telling me that he would like to try and analyze the show and give me my interpretation of it, I would like him to go ahead and start with the Mutin Roshi.
So, Master Roshi is somebody who is extremely interesting to me. He is a flawed character. He sits in a place that I think intentionally doesn't nest so easily into archetypal analogies. And I think that's because he's older and he's a much more complex, motivated individual than, say, the younger characters who are pretty they're pretty transparent. Well, Roshi's much more of a complex character than that.
He's much more esoteric.
Yes, and I think that as we get further into this, I'm going to understand better where he does fit. The way that I see him now is there is this aspect of masculinity that is present in Master Roshi to the point that he has essentially isolated himself and, how do I want to put it? He has taken the obsession to its natural end, I would say. Right? So Roshi is... He's kind of a simp.
A simp?
He is like... Hello,
Good thing
dear.
we're not on Twitch. Simp,
Feet pics, please.
Oh, man.
But that is his flaw. However, he is good. He's a very, very good character. He's essentially... Man. Every time I start going one direction with Roshi, another aspect of him pulls me a different direction. So it's really hard to put my finger on him and try to give him like a place in a more archetypal analysis, so to speak.
Well, let's start here. Why does Master Roshi wear sunglasses?
To hide who he is.
I don't think that's the right analysis. Why do you think that's the analysis?
To prevent the inevitable enlightenment that comes from not wearing them?
Okay, that could be an interpretation I could hear a significant argument for. My interpretation is that Master Roshi wears sunglasses is because he is the blind king. The willing blindness. He is willingly blind, yes or no, to his own vices.
Oh, yes. Absolutely.
That is why he wears sunglasses. Because much like the King Osiris is blind to the nefarious schemes of his brother Set that undo him, Master Roshi is also blind to those things that undo him.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we'll get into that analysis as we go.
That's just the sunglasses.
Okay.
So more on Master Roshi. Like, he has fully abstracted the ideal self from who he is.
So, what I was talking about with the sim thing is more that specific vice. He has essentially...
Right, but that specific vice that's used later in this is not necessarily... It's more of a temptation. It's a...
test.
It's a malign spirit possessing Roshi at the time to test Bulma.
Yeah, see, the interesting thing about Roshi is if you look directly at him and you're like, okay, this is who he is and this is what is like...
Well, look at what he's wearing. Look at what else he's wearing. We've covered his shades. That's it. What else?
But if you extrapolate out actually what's going on here is it's like Roshi is the ultimate test of character to... I mean, I need to rewatch it to even say this, but to everyone that comes across him in a way or another, it seems like the whole reason that he is in the tournament the way that he is to be a test. We'll see how he tests coming up really soon. He is...
But that's not to say he doesn't have any character development, because before we got too far into this, Brok was under the impression, he was like, man, Master Roshi's a great character. And we haven't even gotten to the part where he really develops.
Well, we'll see.
Well, we'll see. But what else is Roshi wearing here?
Of course, he's wearing his turtle shell.
Yes. And what about that turtle shell? And that is the abstraction I was talking about. He, much like Pinocchio, has abstracted his conscience from himself. Now, his conscience happens to be the voice of God, which is no small coincidence. Meaning someone who has attained this level of enlightenment, let's say, is not immune to becoming willfully blind of where they misstep. And I think the hermetization of Roshi is actually a significant characteristic of him to say that this is not the path forward. And we'll see we'll see how Goku differs from that path later on.
Well, that's going to tie in to what our friend says here in chat. Sea turtles shouldn't have been lost in the first place. He was testing Goku. Well, if you look at now that I'm looking at it this way, if you look at it from that perspective, then the turtle is an extension of Roshi, essentially, who is out there existing as this test for anyone to come along. This is like a biblical story, It's like, and then there was a turtle, and he was on the side of the road, and the first passerby ignored him, Like, this is totally that. So we see this with Goku's character, and this is so good. I cannot wait to talk about this situation with Roshi and what he's got for Goku.
Right, and we're going to get there. But what else is Roshi wearing? Because I'm not done talking about Roshi yet.
He's got some sandals. He's got a...
What's on his shirt?
Looks like a bee. Looks like some purple triangles.
It's letters, right?
M-P...
Now, this goes to the idea of speaking magic words. He's emblemizing that. It's just a foreshadowing to how Roshi will deal with the situation later on.
I see.
Right. And we also see that Roshi is...
Oh, wow. Okay. All right.
Right.
Okay, so I've picked up on that. That'll be a fun conversation, too.
Right.
Wow.
Right.
Wow.
Which is why I told you that this show has way more than a lot of people think. And so here we are with
the word on the jar.
Old Pinocchio who never became a real boy. That's what Roshi is right now. Old Pinocchio who never became a real boy, and Jiminy Cricket is right there. Jesus Christ is still with him, traveling.
The hermit, yeah. He did.
And so
not...
what's this? What is this saying?
Well,
it's that you can't.
I do want to point this thing out too, because I think we're gonna have to talk about what the different Dragon Balls represent as we get further into this.
We'll get there,
because he has a Dragon Ball, but just the one.
Right, and we can't even see what number star, because the actual number of stars does impact the significance. But he does have one.
Yes. But that's the only one he's got.
Okay. So what do you want to say there about his one Dragon Ball?
He has knowledge that at least a Dragon Ball exists, and that there are probably more since it's, kind of numbered and whatnot. He has at least an awareness of the path. The path, that is, gather the balls and confront the Dragon of Chaos, right? The Dragon of Chaos, in his case, that he's not confronting, obviously, are his vices and his desocialization, where he is stuck in his own hierarchy, the hierarchy of the self, right? That doesn't make him weak, though. He is a master. It just so happens that he needs to... I think he needs the wisdom to overcome his own limitations in that sense. And this story is not about one-dimensional characters.
Oh no, not at all.
So,
And I think the analogy with Osiris comes more into
oh, it
play
will.
as we get further on.
Yeah.
Um, and so this is basically Osiris, and we'll see later Horus going to the underworld to redeem this particular character. So, I think we move on to what is given to Goku as a result of his efforts, which is the keen tone, the flying Nimbus, if you will.
What did you call it?
The keen tone. That's in Japanese.
So this is great. This whole interaction cements the analysis that you just gave me, right? So the turtle was a test. Goku passed the test, and then Roshi says, "Ah, I see you're responsible enough. You are good enough to be given this thing that will allow you to get where you're going." Right? It'll allow you to progress in a way that if you weren't trustworthy, you would not be allowed to. It would not even.
The path would be closed off to you.
Yeah, the path
so
would
to
not
speak.
reveal itself to you. It wouldn't exist to you. You wouldn't have even been here in the first place. So, this is sort of a meta expansion of that, where it's like, by choosing to just be aware, to have that eye open, and to be the way that Goku is, aware of all of the opportunities that are there in being not being good, in the betterment of oneself. Then, and only then, and that's why everything about Goku has always been he has to become stronger. It's because the theme of it is not just about being good, it's about being in the process of getting better, which is not necessarily the same thing, right? And so
the process versus
the process.
the result.
Yes.
The journey versus the destination. But I would also mention here that we should talk about orientation and how Master Roshi tries to jump onto this flying Nimbus, and what happens?
Well, it definitely doesn't work. Because...
And Turtle talks about that. Turtle pipes up and says why he's not able to do that.
What does Turtle say?
Turtle talks about how he's given into his vices recently.
Yeah.
And he's no longer able to ride the keen tone.
Well, I think specifically in that sense, he is not being honest with himself. Or he's
right,
not
where
being
is he
honest
oriented?
Or I should say, he's not being honest and forthright within the hierarchy he currently occupies, which is the self. I think that might be a more...
Right, the very definition of good that he has defined.
Yes. He is sinning. He is betraying what he believes to be...
By what he knows to be wrong.
Yeah. So, and
not to say that we're trashing on Roshi. I don't want to get that. I don't want to say that.
Yeah, and when I say he's sinning, that's the definition. Sinning is to miss your mark, is to intentionally miss your mark.
And we'll see why specifically he can't ride the keen tone in a minute, because it'll become very obvious as to why.
Yeah, I think it'll be clear.
But first, let's talk about how Goku can ride the keen tone.
Well, Goku is honest. He knows what he wants. He's pretty straightforward. He doesn't lie to himself about his own motivations, and he doesn't lie to anybody else. In the hierarchy he currently occupies, he's still honest.
Right, and he's oriented towards what he needs to do.
Yes.
What the universe is orienting him towards, he is also in alignment with. Which,
right.
If you think about clouds, previous to celestial navigation of the human species, clouds were celestial bodies for most of human history. And particularly when the story like Journey to the West was written, clouds were still considered celestial bodies. I mean, think about humans well, let's say a couple of millennia ago, imagine how they would view clouds, as opposed to stars. They wouldn't think they are that far apart. They're both in the sky, right?
Sure. I mean, and here you have, here's a cloud that you can ride around to gather the stars. It's like
To gather the stars on the Dragon Balls, exactly.
Yeah, you're riding.
It
the
is a
cloud
transcendent,
to gather the stars.
right? It is a transcendent event, and Goku can ride the Keen because he is aligned with the meaning of the universe. And we'll see other characters who willingly deny that same exact thing. Like Master Roshi, and we'll see exactly why he's not aligned.
Right, where that meaning is
Where
the
he
continual betterment.
He
of
has a
the
verbalization.
self through-
Master Roshi has a constant verbalization of what he should and should not do, and still he chooses to do the wrong thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, Roshi is given infinite chances not to do what he does.
By God, God is telling him, don't do this.
Does it anyway.
Right. And I mean, there's a certain rebellious aspect of the Scrunge Master that I appreciate, but
Oh yeah, he's nothing if not strong-willed. And I think that ultimately, finally, can align to be an incredibly powerful aspect of him.
oh yeah,
When
definitely.
it's oriented in the right direction, that will that is driving him to rebel against his conscience it will serve the universe as anything
and
good seems to.
that's a redeeming factor,
Yeah.
which is something that is not often seen in the quote-unquote wise man character.
Well,
Like how does let's say Dumbledore redeem himself?
well, he was gay.
Right, and that's
No,
what I mean. Like,
yeah, there's not a lot there. Like the expansion of Dumbledore's character was, did you know he had a brother? If there was like some things happened. It's not really all that important though.
well, and that's what I mean.
That's
I think that's what Dragon Ball does so well is it's a mythological expansion of the prior human knowledge of these topics. And that's why it transcends all languages. There's so many dubs, even
Yeah, Dragon Ball is. I mean, it could possibly just be the most beloved series of all time. Well, Ball and
the greatest action cartoon ever made. It's what Toonami used to call it. But anyway, so back to the Keen-tone. Goku can ride it, and we're gonna get into another little. Oh no, we gotta we gotta talk first about this guy again. So
So this jackass.
this jackass. I think you had something to say in particular about this.
Trying to remember.
He tries to pick the lock.
Oh yeah, so he thinks he is just vastly intelligent.
The arrogance.
And he's proven time and time and time again that he's not as intelligent as he thinks he is. And this is not, I don't think this is even the first time it's been proven to him. And we're going to see it come back as just a theme. And I think that that's necessary for Pilaf to represent this mode of being that we're trying to make a commentary about with Dragon Ball, which is, it is so prideful and also so inwardly focused that it is blind to all evidence of its own wrongdoing. It is.
You can show this man facts, and he will not believe you.
It is a sort of Luciferian pride, you could say, if we're going to go into the mythos. It is this. He is stuck. He cannot move past it. Every chance he has to be humbled, he is not humbled. And so this is sort of the exploration of like Well, if you think that that's a way to be, let's follow it to its logical end. Let's see how you could be. And so Pilaf is a way of being. If you identify with this picture of Pilaf, you might need to talk to God.
Yeah, you might have been missing that dialogue.
Maybe.
Notice as well how the positive aspect of the masculine and feminine, who he is enslaved, have both figured it out.
They're just watching him. They're like, you could, it's evident, it's right here. You could just pay attention. And he just doesn't.
Willfully ignorant.
Willfully ignorant.
And so here, as we said earlier, Pilaf and the crew are after Roshi's Dragon Ball, but they are unaware that it is around, like, with him at the time. They show no modicum of respect for any of this that they're conducting. Except for, I mean, Shu always show. The issue with that is it's like a child pleading for help within a vessel that is corrupted, and that being Pilaf's pathology, right, is keeping them harnessed in that.
Yeah, well, they're a slave to his will. I mean, it's not
right.
It's not up to them.
And so here we see Pilaf struggle futilely against the fact that he's not as smart as he thinks he is.
He's not as smart or as strong as he thinks he is.
Right. And so let's continue to this.
Oh, yeah.
Eldritch clip, Eldritch screenshot.
So now we see that not only can Goku ride the cloud to gather the stars, but he can use it to traverse water. This symbolic deep chaos metaphor that's just... You can hardly look at anything with an archetypal substructure without having some form of water appear. You can talk about...
Well, think about some of
ancient
the
Sumerian ideas about what was underlying the world and the deep and the chaos. I mean, it's
sea serpents.
Oh yeah,
right.
I wish I had
sea monsters.
the scripture about
the Leviathan.
If you can tame the Leviathan, right? Then you can proclaim yourself to. You can even begin to fathom to proclaim yourself worthy of not following God, so to speak. I think that's the summation of what's talked about in the Bible. And it's like, oh, would you take this Leviathan? Would you saddle it? Would you take it to your neighbor? Would you do this? Would you do that? You know, if you cannot do that, then how could you possibly go against me? And me
right.
being your conscience.
Exactly. And so here, Goku is oriented as such as he is able to even traverse the chaos, the magnitudinal chaos that we humans have interpreted evolutionarily as the ocean.
Yes, it's sort of the polar opposite of what you see with the stars and the clouds. The ocean is pure unknown. Instead of looking at it like, oh, you wish upon a star, right? You elevate,
or enlightenment, things
yeah.
of that nature, right?
And also, there's a deeper form of enlightenment. It's a more of a Jungian sort of idea with the dive into the depths of water to the deeper aspects of the self, and then you can use that to incorporate the self. And so another idea that's nested in the ocean that may or may not be representative of anything in Dragon Ball, but is that idea, is that deep subconscious truth. And so Goku's just riding the ocean. He's like, well, this is all a game to me. This is fun.
I do want to mention something external to Dragon Ball in this instance, and that would be Bloodborne.
Sure.
Bloodborne's connection with the dream-like state and the deep bodies of water,
yes,
are important. And here we see the orientation of a dream, right, a goal, intermingling with the eldritch body of water in a maybe fantastical way. And what I mean to say is that Goku is able to transcend the dreams of normal people by orienting himself towards what he knows to be good.
I see what you mean. Yeah, there's this sort of, the unconscious, the dreamlike, the animus, and also, the conscience, because the conscience stems from that. That's where it comes from. To speak to you is that deep place, where it resides, you could say. And so, yeah,
deep like the ocean deep.
Yeah.
Right.
And there, and that's also, we would be remiss to mention, if we're gonna keep using Pinocchio analogies, that inevitably the journey that Pinocchio takes brings him to the belly of the Leviathan to rescue his father.
Right, exactly. And not saying that Goku has gone under the water yet, but he is able to transcend the water for now, let's say. And
this will become relevant later.
It will. And so he is also joyously interfacing with his orientation, which is how you should feel when you're oriented towards what you know is to be the best path forward. And if you look, I think Brok specifically told me to choose this image. There were a few other ones, but I think
I didn't even have a reason. I just saw it and I knew. The
expression on Goku's face comes from the determination of Toriyama to say that if you interface with if you orient yourself correctly, you will feel joyous as Goku does.
Yes, this is a joy-inspiring mode of being. It's, and you see that. That's why every time somebody's riding the Nimbus, I mean, unless they're just, comically being scared, it's a joyful, it's like a roller coaster ride. They're having fun. It is such an enjoyable thing for them.
Well, also
it's portrayed that way because it's like it's an elevation of the self to the clouds in a symbolic way. It's feeling up instead of down. So everything about it is just like all tied together in the imagery.
So we just said again. I'm trying to. I had a point. That I had something I was going to say.
Tiers of it, right? So you could compare standing on a cloud as just pointing out. It's obvious, but the elevation of Goku feels higher than if he were not on the cloud, so to speak. And so while he's on this path with the cloud, he is elevated. Like all of him is elevated.
Right, but it's also freeing. Goku is able to travel wherever he desires, right? Because, let's say he's narrowed his focus into one thing, helping the turtle, and from that narrowing of his focus, he is then able to broaden his focus out, which is a phenomenon that is mentioned by Dr. Peterson in several of his lectures, indicating that if you can narrow your focus, then you can become more valuable than just that thing. So a plumber becomes a good employer, becomes a good member of the community, and gives back to that community, right? You become more by focusing yourself into one thing. And by focusing himself into walking with God, Goku is able to free himself. So by putting constraints on yourself, you're able to free yourself. It's such a paradoxical idea, but it's exactly what's conveyed in the episode.
Well, this is the theme all throughout Dragon Ball 2, is it's that taking on the burden of the moment is the elevation of the self basically always. It is, if you take on the struggle of the thing, it will grant you power. And in this sense, taking on the burden of carrying the turtle, of listening to the conscience, of doing, of all of that, right, leads here, where he is given the freedom, he's given the ability now to expand his hierarchy, so to speak, right? Because before this,
it's not just
hierarchies up.
It's not just the expansion of hierarchy. What can you do when you are at such an elevation as the clouds?
You can see.
You can see. You can see. You can conceptualize more than a person on the ground. That's important. Master Roshi has sunglasses. He cannot conceptualize that.
Yeah, the motif of seeing is deeper than I'd even thought about. Yeah. Well,
and in this picture, Goku's eyes are
wide open.
Wide open.
Yep.
It's important to note. So let's continue. And by continue, I mean let's take a short break because I need to use the bathroom. Brock will discuss while I'm gone.
All right. Well, put on the spot to Vamp. I said that I would talk about Magic the Gathering. So I think that we are entering an era of Magic that in a few years we're going to be looking back at like, man, the pre-2020 paradigm of playing was a really it's going to be looked at sort of like back in the vintage days, man. It's going to be like the cards all look the same. You could tell what people were playing from across the table. You'd be like, oh yeah, I recognize that card. And like you would go to your local game store and you would give them money for the cards instead of just shilling out exactly what Wizards wants direct to them for really specific reprints that look like branded products that you recognize. So it's basically like Ready fucking Player One now, and all you're doing is just buying things based on your recognition, and your pattern recognition determines everything that you do because now you are a corporate slave to what WotC wants you to be. You are just a money-generating, consuming consumer.
So anyway. Let's go ahead and continue here. So
I figured that might rush.
I didn't even hear much of what you said. I just knew I needed to get back. So here you can see Blooma's a little angry that she didn't get a reward. Now
Cain
I think
and Abel.
Right. I was gonna say I think this is the spirit of. And by spirit, I mean the mode of being by which you half-heartedly follow something to receive the reward you will not.
Yes, you do not get your participation trophy. Sorry, this is
right. This is what should be learned by people who do community service and volunteer work for the utilization of putting it on their resume.
I think we need to manually update the chat. It looks like it's not working again. So I don't know what's going on with it.
Just Chris said, Chris Sombra said, as much as I like Magic, Nani? Yeah, I can see it. This is because I use the bathroom.
I had told him yesterday that if I had to vamp, I was just going to rant about Magic. And then I remembered that I said that and decided to just commit. So I vented my thoughts about
just a quick bathroom break. It was that was all I just needed a few seconds. Okay, so anyways, right, the spirit of Cain.
Yeah, so there is also this thing. I think this is an expansion of the Cain and Abel story because Bulma's interpretation of sacrifice is not the same interpretation of sacrifice that Roshi has. Or that Turtle has, which Roshi has, right? So she's like, I sacrificed too. I came along, right?
I gave him salt water.
Yeah. I made a sacrifice too. Like, I half-heartedly tried too. Don't I deserve something? And, you know, that's the Cain and Abel dynamic, which is that, like, you know, sorry, you don't.
You don't. If your spirit is not in the thing, you don't deserve shit.
Yeah, it's like, this is not yours. What? Like, you can go along now.
You can go along now, exactly.
Or, unless.
Right, and we'll get to unless. But I do want to mention the other thing is that Turtle's expression in this clip.
Turtle's like, dude, I've been talking to you about this for so fucking long. And right now, seriously? So it's pretty clear.
Right, and
man, I can't believe I didn't realize that Turtle was his conscience. It's just it's so obvious.
oh yeah, very much so. Turtle is his Jiminy Cricket.
I just didn't think about it.
Standard Cricket.
Just didn't think about it.
Well, and I mean, here as well, it's his conscience telling him that something is unconscionable.
Oh yeah.
Which is even Blooma's request to be rewarded to begin with.
Oh yes. I was attributing his response to Roshi because I didn't know at what time.
Oh, this comes when Blooma is asking for her reward. And Roshi is asking Turtle if Blooma helped him. He says no.
And so yeah, this is Roshi's gut feeling about Bulma. Really. This is like what your conscience says about her behavior, right? And it's like his conscience says, yeah, now I'm not comfortable with the way that you're operating. So nah, you didn't earn something. So yeah, Turtle's not having any of it.
And so the willingly blind king decides to take advantage of the situation.
Oh man, this frame is pretty great. I have to say, I can't believe I don't see this memed anywhere ever.
I know, right?
It's so good.
There are so many memes in Dragon Ball that aren't used at all.
I mean, just look at it.
It's immaculate.
Would you just look at it?
And so if you notice, it's the malicious form of chaos manifesting itself before Blooma, indicating that if you sacrifice a piece of yourself, then you can get the thing you want.
Oh damn. That is exactly the situation. Look at that Dragon Ball hanging around his neck.
Well, look at the wave as well. We were talking about how water is that deep chaos that you can reach into. So what are your thoughts on that, Brok?
I would say that a part of why Roshi is acting the way that he is an improper relationship with his own shadow, which is also tied to water in a sense. You know, the deeper self, the territory within the self that is not yet explored. You could categorize it that way. And so yeah, we have this water here that is it's a wave washing up behind him. It's sort of like, I don't know, how would you expand on a wave in that sort of context rushing up?
I think it is indicative of the wave of consciousness that Blooma is now experiencing. the wave of self-consciousness, if you will. Because what does Roshi ask of her?
He's like, well, maybe if I could just like take a little peek at your underwear. It's like not a long one, just just kind of want to see.
Right, but that in let's say in Bloodborne, for example, the deep ocean represents deep subconscious. This is her subconscious telling her that this is a bad idea.
I see.
That's my interpretation of it. Because it's from her perspective, more or less.
Yeah, we're seeing her POV. We're seeing... I mean, the whole situation is painted out. I mean, I kind of want to hang this. I want to get this framed. Look at this. It's beautiful.
It's so lovely.
I'm going to be like Jordan. I'm just going to have frames of, like, obscure anime, like, scrunches and shit. I'm going to be like,
Scrunch.
Sparks Joy.
So right, I think that's exactly what it is. And you can see Turtle there isn't happy. And this and again, Turtle is
yeah. The more I look at this frame though, it's so amazing because it says so much.
It says so much. The dark shadow on Turtle, right?
Yeah, you can the dark undershadow, right, indicates also in animation just usually like a shock or like a stark reaction, and we can see that Turtle is like, that was unconscionable. This is unconscionable.
Right, exactly. He is appalled by all situations going on around him.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's continue. And so as a result, what does Bulma do to the request to reduce the strength of her character in order to gain a material thing?
Well, I think it's really important here to specify with sin. I mentioned it earlier. To sin being a literal definition, to intentionally miss the mark. It was an archery, right? It was originally an archery terminology that was essentially like, I think it was essentially to miss, right? To sin was to miss.
Well, interestingly enough, in Latin, I don't know if it's all Latin-based languages, but in Spanish, sin means without.
Yes. And if you look on the calculator, it says sin as well, but I never figured out how to use it properly. But it probably says something. That was a bad joke. Don't laugh.
So anyways... So right, to sin is to miss the mark, and I think Turtle being a
the reason that
creature
I say that
oriented towards good is appalled by both the sins happening.
Well, specifically in this case too, why I'm saying that is Bulma is aware that this action is a sin. You cannot argue in any sense that this is like normalized in the fantasy world the Dragon Ball is or anything. We're seeing it physically shown to us here
that it's not normalized.
She knows
right.
that it's a sin, and so
but
the
how
decision
does she
that
react
she makes
to it?
Is whether or not she's going to sin in this situation, to cheat, to give a piece of herself up, so to speak, for the reward that she thinks that she deserves.
Right, and I think it's about time that we mentioned what happened in the last episode with the removal of her modesty.
That's right.
The material manifestation of the dignity that Bulma could hold to herself is no longer attached at this point. It's been removed unconsciously to her because Goku gaining his distinction.
Wow.
Brok is sitting back, just looking, just thinking.
Yeah, I didn't think there was any relevance to that beyond it just being like, hey, we need to. It's it's pretty funny because I specifically was like, we're specifying literally that he is aware um, of just like biology, right? The otherness of the awareness of the older opposite gender, and
Right.
the but what this means is that her encounter with Goku, her encountering the good that he represents in the way that he is, in that he is always bettering himself, she becomes aware that she can no longer act in that way and retain her modesty, because now to her it is a sin.
Because she's seen something that is more than that.
Yes, she has seen the embodiment of an idea that transcends that simple idea of that you deserve something, that you can just freely act however you want to get whatever you want, and that it won't come at a ultimately a price to your soul. And
It won't come at a price, and it won't come at the exposure of your vulnerability.
sure,
And that's what we're going to get into.
exposure of vulnerability, definitely in the archetypal sense, because
Right.
this is essentially like her overinflated idea of herself makes her think that she is not as vulnerable as she is. And what she shows is her vulnerability, right? Because
Somehow I went too ahead. I have no idea.
she dances around, and then no, she willfully sins.
She does what she knows to be wrong, and by doing so, she forfeits her own dignity. And so here we have Master Roshi gazing into this lewd image, let's say. Brok is just looking. He's just looking, that's
I'm just taking it in. This it is it's just like a beautiful train wreck of chaos that represents so much more than it looks like. It's hilarious in a sense, because this is significant. Usually in a dynamic like this, an event like this would be significant for one of the characters in the scene. But there's significance for everybody with everything that is happening, practically. It's
right, exactly. It's contributory towards all characters that are present.
Yeah.
And so here you have Bluma exposing her vulnerability, thinking that it is hidden by modesty, only to have it be discovered by the man who cannot see. Paradoxically speaking, that is the blind king whose vices are apparent. Doesn't necessarily mean that those who are seeking that same avenue will be able to avoid being seen by the king, let's say. And this is like it's almost a retribution or a rebuke of thoughts.
Oh yeah. I was just waiting for it to build up to this, because this is the dynamic.
If you're willing to debase yourself, in this way.
So this is the reason that I originally called Roshi a simp, because it's like the simp exists as a temptation to the thought. And here we talk about the test, the trial. Dragon Ball says, if you're being a thought, not on the path, you should probably do better. You should probably actually earn your keep instead of selling yourself.
Right. because it's not going to end well.
It will not end well for you.
And
it only harms these simps.
And it does harm Roshi
Mm-hmm.
to indulge in these things.
Oh yeah, no, she is harming him by letting him indulge, right? And he is harming her by letting her indulge. Their mutual indulgence in this situation is a mutual sin. And meanwhile, Goku soars on the clouds with his pure heart.
Right, exactly, and that's significant to note.
And the show's telling you, which do you want to be?
In the mud and the muck of being Bluma at this moment, right? Which do you want to be?
I think it's very important that these things are happening simultaneously. Yeah,
and so
here's your reward, and here's your reward. Here's how you face life, and here's how you face life. Here's your lot, and here's your lot. Essentially.
The sad part is, though, that Bluma could have decided not to do this.
Well, yeah. I mean, she was given the opportunity to just say, nah, I wouldn't do that.
And do you think they still would have been able to get the Dragon Ball?
Of course.
Right.
They would have gotten the Dragon Ball if she said no. That was her test.
Exactly. She still got it, though. So, therefore, it's a legitimate business practice?
I think that's how that works, right?
I mean, thoughts make money.
She does make the money. Just, well, at a higher cost than necessary.
Higher cost than money.
Oh, yeah.
All right, so let's move on here. So, she gets the Dragon Ball, and she's elated. Dancing around with joy. There's Goku on the cloud. And Master Roshi is sweating a little bit. Do you be able to see it now, I think?
Oh, yeah. We see that Bulma has learned nothing.
Right. Learn nothing.
She should have
but joyously ignorant.
You know, taken the ball, gone off, and felt ashamed for the way that she acted. I mean, that's the reasonable thing to do if you were going to at least learn anything from the situation. But we see Goku and Bulma are in the same place mentally right now. And, well, again, the contrast is here. It's like, which mode of being would you prefer?
Well, actually, I disagree that they're in the same state of being. I think that Bluma
I'm saying on a really surface level. I'm just saying, like, Goku is happy with how things went. Bulma is like, we won out. I'm also happy with how things went. And it's like, she just does not have the context of a wise person.
Well, this is the idea of, like, selling yourself out to get something and you achieve it and being ecstatic for it. Goku being, it looks like Goku's just very content. He's not celebrating. His arms are behind his back, right? He's just very content with the outcome of what's happened. He is also ignorant to the ramifications of what's just happened from his own knowledge, let's say.
Sure.
So being ignorant, he may be happy with the outcome. He doesn't fully understand the context of what's happened. Bluma does understand what has happened as far as she thinks she's more secure than she actually is. And so she's celebrating that she's revealed not too much of what she thinks to Roshi. Now, another particular reason why I wanted to bring this up is because Roshi is somewhat nervous here. He didn't expect to see that. What do you think of that, Brok?
I think that Roshi's a little shook. I think that if he is wise at all right now, where he is mentally, he is contemplating his decisions. Because this is an opportunity for him to say, like, that was a bad decision. I shouldn't have put her in that position, and I didn't understand the ramifications of my actions, and maybe I shouldn't do that again because that was not what I actually wanted. that I think a forthright, more honest with himself Roshi would be in that headspace. I don't think that's entirely where he's at.
No, I agree. I think that he is nervous because he saw more vulnerability than he expected. And he's not comfortable with the vulnerability of the female form, and we'll get into that.
Well, also it could be that he's not comfortable actually seeing someone else's vulnerability because it reminds him of his own vulnerabilities that he is not currently able to overcome.
Exactly. Right.
Right. And in a sense, the mutual lie continues. Because neither of them learned their lesson here.
Not here.
Not yet.
Not yet. So let's move on. So next here, we find out that Bluma the whole time had no underwear on to begin with.
So now Bluma's mad at the idea of morality itself. She's angry that this would even be a thing that's unconscionable in the first place.
Right. She's upset that the exposing of vulnerability is an avenue by which she wouldn't benefit from going down.
Yeah, she's like, this isn't fair. I should just get what I want without ramifications.
Without having to reveal anything. Without actually showing vulnerability. Yeah.
To the show, so to speak.
Exactly. And so she's upset at Goku because Goku, by the processes that we described in the last episode, was able to unveil discrimination by figuring out that people, women in particular, are starkly different than himself and anyone he's ever known. So by uncovering this secret about Bluma, he's uncovered part of her vulnerability, the vulnerability of being a female. And Bluma not being able to recognize that even when Goku tells her that she is missing her balls in the last episode.
Literally.
Ignores that fact. Ignores the observation and goes in, vulnerable as can be, to confront the manifestation of the old king, let's say, who tests her and immediately sees all her vulnerabilities, regardless of any types of garments she tries to hide them. And that's particularly why she had to have no underwear at the point that she met Roshi.
Right. It's to, I would say, in just encountering Roshi, you are elevated to a different tier of
scrutiny.
Yeah. It's like, well,
it's interesting. Shell posted something about the ancient Egyptians rolling 20-sided die and saying like they tried to bluff Anubis, and it's like that's the way. Anubis immediately sees your vulnerabilities. Roshi can immediately see your vulnerabilities. And
right.
So that's why it's important that the proto-masculine form is able to remove those protections, and the old masculine form is able to see right through them.
Right, and I'm also starting to sort of see this utility in the state that Roshi seems to willfully keep himself. It's almost as if he believes that by being lecherous, he will be more... it will be more possible for him to see those vulnerabilities in other people and to help them. And so he is willfully sacrificing his own...
To stare in the abyss.
He's essentially casting himself into the abyss so that he can save other people from it, in a sense, right?
He's putting on the bloat head to save other bloat heads.
So Master Roshi is like, I cannot be good, because if I were truly good, then I would not be here.
Then I would not understand those who are not.
And so he says, I will try to make everybody else good at the cost of myself.
Mm-hmm. And so Goku, as you can see, is very relaxed. He doesn't really mind. To him, it was an exploration of morality and interface that led him to remove the underwear in the first place.
It's just an exploratory behavior.
Right. It's just an exploratory behavior. So let's move on from here. This goes to this.
Now, we need to talk about the significance of this.
You told me to put this in, so go
here's
ahead.
the thing about this frame. I mean, there's so much to unpack here. The first thing about it is, man, look at this fucking gator. Look at him.
He looks pretty sick.
He's got sunglasses.
I used to play this like whack-a-mole game at the putt-putt center near my grandparents' house, where there would be crocodiles that would come out with shades on, and you'd have to whack them, and you would get score, obviously. And they would like say things like groovy and stuff like that. So it's very interesting that you pull up this that you wanted to put this clip in.
I also just it stood out to me immediately because of the fucking switchblade. Like what the fuck?
Yeah, I think this might be the first bladed weapon we've seen in the show.
Well, it's just out of nowhere.
No. Sorry, the bear had a scimitar or something, I think.
Yeah, but I mean, just like, it's so strange compared to what we've seen so far. It's just like, okay, here's this impotent child emperor, and I just wanted to make a comment on the absurdity of this image because it was like,
Actually,
he's so ineffectual, and then in this scene he just whips out this knife.
Now that you mention it, it's important to note, I think, that Pilaf brings real malice to immoral beings. Maybe say amoral beings, right? Animals beings void of morals is what I mean to say. And Pilaf, being the arrogant and deceitful, not yet resentful, but will become resentful, being that he is, brings real malice to creatures of that type. Actually, that was just something I thought of just now. I did not choose to put this clip in, so
no,
I think...
So, I'm kind of following you.
Mm-hmm.
He brings a malice that is not his own. He does, like, there's something incongruous about looking at him with this blade, where it's like, he just doesn't, he's all posturing. He doesn't understand the level of malice of the things that he wields. And so we're seeing it here, and as we move along in the story, the ramifications of the fact that he thinks that he is more mature and understands the world better than he does, he's given many chances to move past that. And when he doesn't, the ultimate eventuality is horrible. But, I mean, also, this is just a funny picture of him holding a switchblade at a gator.
Sure.
Who's never seen again.
It's true. He's never seen again. But yeah, I think that's an apt analysis. And I especially wanted to point out the production of real malice and how the gator reacts, because a gator is normally a vicious creature, man-eater, you might say.
Yeah, but he's in his own natural space. Like, there's a different type of...
Bringing the technological malice of man to nature is what Pilaf is doing in this instance. For almost no reason.
Just to assert a space in his own dominance.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, you know.
And so we'll see how that pays off. Oh no, we won't, because how does this sequence unfold? So Pilaf threatens them. They look in the Kame house for the Dragon Ball, and they ask Roshi to give them a push off the island, to which he makes a hole in their ship. Anything to say about that?
I forgot about that. He intentionally makes the hole, right?
Yep.
I think that the idea of a sinking ship in an analysis like this is important, because he essentially he sends them out to contend with chaos itself and introspection, in a sense, because it's like you need to go there and you need to think.
Even Master Roshi is trying to teach someone like Pilaf.
Yes, he is oriented towards betterment in that sense. He wants to make things better wherever he sees, and so he knows that if they get away scot-free without the consequences, that he will not be helping them be better. And so as a force, he says, okay, go grapple with that deep lurking chaos of the unconscious, because your ship is sinking.
Right.
So he sends them out, and basically, and you could interpret it, you could pull the camera out a little bit further and say that it was an inevitable thing, and that their encounter with Roshi in the first place leads them to an introspection of their own moral character. And this is just a representation of that.
Right, it's a confrontation of that, let's say, shadow.
Sure.
And it is what they need. And this brings up an interesting idea that I've heard throughout my life, which is people enabling other people to be reliant or dependent or weak. Moral weakness, I mean, when I talk of weakness. And
Yes,
that translates
weak in
to Dragon Ball. That translates exactly to Dragon Ball. The weak characters in Dragon Ball are morally weak characters. All of them. Yes. Every weak character is morally weak. It has nothing to do with how big your biceps are.
Well, all of the fights are just...
Which is a total misstep from some of the analysis about the show and about the manga that I've seen criticizing the powering up of characters to absurd steroid level levels, I suppose.
I'm just trying to think of what term I want to call it. It's... The fighting isn't the point. The fighting is just... It is a...
The fighting is a physical
It's a formality.
It's a physical manifestation of the struggle that's going on within the psyche of each character.
Yes, and I mean that's going to become much more clear as we get to the tournament.
Yeah, the Tenkaichi Budokai will be a huge point.
Right. But for now, it is a good thing to seed in here and say like, hey, this is an aspect of what we're seeing, because we're trying to get past it, and the fights are great. And the action is awesome, and the memes are fucking amazing. But the real point is we're trying to get down to that point where that is all stripped away, and we can talk about the motivations of the characters, the ideas that they're trying to embody, the modes of being that work, don't work, how they interact with each other, what confronting chaos does to these different modes of being, and how you can act in reaction to that. Like, those are the things that we're trying to get down to, and it's under every single thing, right?
Right. It's the difference
fighting
between
has nothing
the
to do with that.
emotional states and the stakes that are on the line between, let's say, the rise of Skywalker and the Empire Strikes Back. Right.
Yeah.
So I think we've said about enough on this slide. I didn't even think we were gonna spend that long on this slide. Oh well, let's go on. So Bluma cannot ride the Keentone. What's that all about?
It's about what we said. It's about how she be. You know, sometimes that just be how it is. She be how she is. That's it. I mean,
she is.
We've pretty much dissected her at this point. She is clearly not honest with herself.
Not oriented
She's
towards
not
what
oriented.
she knows to be the right
good.
way.
In her own opinion, she's not good. She knows she's not good.
And she's consistently deceiving Goku.
Well, we'll get there, actually. I'm not going to make that comment just yet.
Okay, fair.
I think you know, but yeah, we'll get there.
I mean, you also wanted to add this pick.
Oh, it's just funny. But I
Because
think that it is representative of, like, here's the outcome. Still the same for you, Bulma. You still can't ride the Nimbus. Now Goku has a Nimbus. It's like, now you need Goku. Goku needed you before this. You know, it was like you had a plan, right? But now
Goku can not only conceive of a plan, but he conceive of a path.
Now Goku can enact that plan. You're still not enacting it.
Right. Another thing is, I think this shot is actually perfect to encapsulate the personal pain that goes through introspection. Realizing that you have no path is a painful process.
Yes.
And if you notice, after this, Bluma says that she probably wouldn't want to ride the cloud anyways.
Now that's definitely not a way to be.
Definitely not a way to be. Right.
Yeah. Whenever you're at that space where you're like, the cloud probably wasn't worth riding, ooh.
Yeah, that's a big doomer mentality.
It's not a good place to mentally be.
And so, if you're not able to face the fact that you don't have a path, you'll never be able to ride the Nimbus. And we'll get into later on characters that can and cannot as we go forward. But it's interesting to note as well that Goku is kind of oblivious as to the reasons why. He knows who can and can't, but he's just joyously accepting of the facts that subconsciously he knows he has a path and she doesn't. A path that is righteous and forthright in the world, I mean to say.
And not only that, Goku has the humility now to just, he has infinite gratitude. He's just happy for the rest of the episode because it's like, wouldn't you be? Right? A callous person or somebody who didn't appreciate what was given to them would be like, this is cool, and then they wouldn't appreciate it and they'd probably abuse it. But it's like, Goku is just like, he actually appreciates it. And I think it's kind of important that we're just seeing him. He's just like, this is amazing. This is great. He's just like, he's so positive and he's a force of positivity that he can recognize the good in the world in that sense. And whereas Bulma's sitting here saying, like, you know, well, it probably wasn't worth it anyway. It's like, they're so diametrically opposed in that way at this moment too. So
right. And the last thing I would like to say is that the sour grapes sentiment that Bulma exudes is the very last part of this episode, which, if you look at the journey of Goku at the beginning of this episode, walking with God, following the path he knows to, denying the expedient and the rewards from that, and then Bluma constantly seeking the expedient,
putting the destination before the journey. Debasing
herself for the value that she can perceive, being the Dragon Ball, all has led to her ultimate pain and Goku's ultimate joy.
I just had a thought that I want to add to that too, because it's like, you think about value and how people view the value of things, right? And in Goku, his value is in his actions, right? So to Goku, my actions are my value. And so when he sees the turtle, he's like, I'm not the value. My actions are the value. And his actions are what lead him to the Nimbus. So when confronted with the Blind King who says, where's your value? She says, I'm the value.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Right. Exactly. And she gets And if you take the Dragon Balls in a vacuum, without each other, they are valueless.
Right, but all 7 combined and...
Correct, but what I'm getting at is that her saying that she is the value, she receives something of equal value. Right? She may be valuable, but that is a missing piece of the full whole.
Well,
whereas Goku's actions are valuable, so he receives something that allows him to conduct those actions more efficiently.
Well, if she says, okay, the value is me, Roshi's response is technically yes.
Right, technically yes, but you need more than that.
Right. That is not the answer to the question that you have not even posed to yourself yet.
Mm-hmm.
I would say.
Whereas Goku already has that one Dragon Ball, let's say, and now since he's valuing those actions that he's taken and what good he has done in the world as his value to the blind king who is judging them, he receives a tool that allows him to orient himself more efficiently. Most efficiently. Because think about when the keen tone is used last. It's last used on Earth, where it exists, and then not to get too much into Z, but just saying that it's not used on Namek because it doesn't exist there, and we'll get into why I think the keen tone doesn't exist there. Right, we'll get into that. Not to get too much into Z, but the point being, the keen tone itself, being that tool to more efficiently operate along the orientation that you've set out for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. It's something that is so invaluable, but it's not something that is available to people who cannot be honest with themselves about their own motivations and
that's
who
something
they
that
are.
yeah, and that is something that is not common. It's very uncommon to meet people who are forthright in what they're doing, and they believe it to be the best choice. Like, think about the people you work with, Brok.
Sure.
Do you think that's where they want to be?
Nope.
Right, but they're not following the forthright and righteous goal that they can obviously conceive. The conceiving of the greatest possible good is what you should be aiming at. And if you don't do that, you can't ride the keen tone.
Sorry, it's going to be a long journey then.
It's going to be a long journey.
Yeah.
And you're going to have to make more mistakes and learn from those mistakes before you're even able to possibly conceive of riding it.
And then, whenever you've gotten to the next Dragon Ball, you're just going to pay for it with yourself again?
Well, we'll see on the next episode. I think that's a good place to wrap up.
Yeah, I think that this episode had way more packed into it than I was expecting.
Yeah, it was 2 hours.
Yeah.
We spent 2 hours on one episode this time. And you were trying to tell me that we were going to get faster. We're getting slower.
Nah. This episode just was very, very dense. I mean, it's the episode we're introduced to the idea of the Nimbus, so it's like, okay, there's going to be a lot to say about that, because it's like, what is Roshi's relationship with it, Goku's, Bulma's, etc., etc., etc. So I still think that not every episode is going to be between 1 and 2 hours. I think that we're going to be able to kind of move at not a fast pace, but not 2 hours an episode pace.
I doubt it.
You think the next episode is going to warrant as much as this?
Maybe. You might be right. Maybe not as much as this, but it will be focusing on a new character. So
there will be stuff to say for sure, but not. I don't know if there will be this much.
So right. Any concluding thoughts on episode 3? Because we actually did not talk about Oolong.
Yeah, we have screenshots for Oolong, but it's late.
It is late, and we've already talked for...
Didn't expect it to
2 hours.
Run this long into this episode, but I'm glad it did, because I am underestimating how much there is to unpack.
Right, and so we will talk next time about more about deception and more about cowardice, moral weakness.
Oh yeah, I have a note on my phone that's like, I wrote one thing about Oolong. I don't even remember what I wrote. I said, Oolong is a test of courage. So that's in the next episode we'll see how that holds up. I don't know. I don't remember the episode to the extent that I can even say with any confidence that is a confident analysis, but that was the first thing that came to mind looking at the images and kind of recalling the episode.
But we'll talk about it more.
Yeah.
And we will continue to see how Goku's walking with God origins that he's had allow him to further advance in that Matthew principle that those who have everything, more will be given, and those who have nothing, everything will be taken. As Goku continues to accelerate his gaining of knowledge and moral turpitude, he will continue to gain more and more. And that is reflective of reality. It's not an ought, it's an is in this situation. And so they travel off, having gained a Dragon Ball, and they head on to the next one. I think this episode is very important to introduce the idea of the blind king, the Osiris of this story. And you will definitely see in future episodes how he embodies Osiris very much.
Well, I guess before the next couple of episodes, I'm going to brush up my knowledge on Osiris. And then maybe I can recognize these a little bit quicker.
Sure, and we will continue to discuss these and more on Get the Mic. This was episode 3. Again, if you liked this video, please subscribe, smash the like button.
It
Cringe
hurts every
all
time.
about.
Uh,
What do you want me to say?
there-
I mean, I'm ironically saying it now. It's just like,
But, like, what? You're not going to say it? I mean, it's almost like necessary.
but seriously, if you did like this video, we will have more coming. I'll probably have an episode tomorrow, and then we'll pick up next week.
Yeah, I think...
The owl will be out of town.
Yeah, we were talking about it, and they were like, oh, there'll be probably like 2 recording sessions and like a week and a half before we get back to it. And then after both of our responses to the first episode, we were like, well, maybe we should just go with it and try to record this and, not essentially put it on ice for a week and a half, because there's a lot.
Yeah, I mean, you want to strike while the iron is hot, let's say, and we'll get into that. I think that is exemplified in this story. It's a big mythos, and Toriyama had to know. There's some knowledge here because it lasted for so long.
There has to be some level of conscious decision to this. There's too much. There are far too many elements of this for all of it to
that
be
align
subconscious.
basically. That align mythologically, let's say.
They align on many axes.
They align on a level deeper than many other stories. And so, ending off on this episode, just want to recap some points. Like I said, it was important to introduce the idea of the blind king. I think it was introduce the idea of the sage, who is a separate entity of the king, which we can see this also in The Lion King, where Mufasa and Rafiki are separate entities who symbiotically bolster each other. This is not that case. Master Roshi chooses not to be bolstered by the sage Holy Spirit character that is Turtle. And we see Bluma be morally incorrect and Goku be morally correct, and the tendency for, if you are in the right place at the right time, for you to be more often in the right place at the right time, exponentially grow. And we'll continue to see that as more and more tragedies will befall Bluma than Goku, let's say.
Oh yeah, no, it's as it said in the Bible. To those have everything, more will be given, and to those who nothing, everything will be taken.
Mm-hmm.
And we're going to see sort of the eventuality of that it's like your orientation compounds upon itself. If you use good for good, then it will beget even more good. And if you use bad for bad, you will beget so much bad that you will be in hell.
Right. And I think that's a good place to end off, because next episode we will see someone who is actually in their own created hell.
Exactly.
Good way, good segue to end it off. This is Owl.
This is Brok.
And this is the Get the Mic podcast, talking about Dragon Ball, episode 3, which is the Flying Nimbus of Roshi.
The Flying Nimbus of Roshi. It was a good episode.
Well, that's about all.
Peace out.